Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard 8th edition video. Today we'll continue looking at the major leaks that have been shown online, and we're going to continue looking at some of the sort of light to medium vehicles that the Imperial Guard have available to them. I have to say one thing that has jumped out at me in regards to this index is that the units are sort of all over the place. It's got we've got some fast attack, then we've got some dedicated transports, and it's a little bit all over the place. But it's not the end of the world. I can imagine it's going to make things a little bit more difficult when it comes to flicking through your book to find the relevant units. I have to say that our current codex, should I say our 7th edition codex, is very, very well organized. Anyway, let's take a look. So last episode we looked at the Scout Sentinel and how we sort of came to the conclusion that really Armoured Sentinels are where it's going to be in the new edition. And let's actually take a look at Armoured Sentinels now. So Armoured Sentinels have a movement value of 8, weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength toughness 5, wounds 6, attacks 1, leadership 7, save 3+. So the major differences here is that it's got 1 inch less movement, but it has an additional save. It's got a 3+ save rather than a 4+. So the Armoured Sentinel, that's a good trade in my opinion. Now the Armoured Sentinel is 40 points base, plus you've got to pay 10 points for the multi-laser. So the Armoured Sentinel is now 50 points base. So both Sentinels have gone up by a significant amount of points. Both Sentinels have gone up by about 5 points, if I remember correctly. No, about 10 points, my mistake. Both Sentinels have gone up by 10 points because you now have to pay for that multi-laser, which is a real shame. Now, we already know a lot. There's not much more to really say about the Armoured Sentinel. Honestly, I think it's well worth paying those 5 extra points to get that 3+ save. It doesn't have any additional abilities over the Scout Sentinel, so it explodes like the Scout Sentinel, and it has smoke launchers like the Scout Sentinel. So the Armoured Sentinel is just a good investment. It lacks that scout move at the beginning of the game, but really, I don't really see that being all that useful. It has, obviously, as always, it has a few more weapon options available to it. So we have, las cannons and plasma cannons and missile launchers available to the Armoured Sentinel. The Sentinel Chainsaw is still available. But let's take a look at sort of some weapon options and how many points that's going to cost us. So if we take a look at the plasma cannon, that costs us 15 points. So the plasma cannon costs us 15 points, but it's only heavy D3, so that's really not worth it in my opinion. Even if you get the maximum number of shots, you're only going to hit with half, and then you've got a wound, so I'm not so sure about that. I feel like, pardon me, I feel like the autocannon would probably be a pretty good choice, although that is also 15 points. So the autocannon and the plasma cannon are kind of interesting choices on the Armoured Sentinel, because the plasma cannon has the potential to do more damage, and it can be overcharged. Okay? So if you supercharge the plasma cannon, you get an extra strength and an extra damage. But if you roll that 1, the Sentinel, no matter how many wounds it's got, it's just removed. So that's incredible. That's insane. So plasma cannon, if we just look at the standard profile, has heavy D3 shots. So it has the potential to do more shots than the autocannon. I think essentially what it comes down to with the the comparison between the plasma cannon and the autocannon, because they both cost 15 points, is the plasma cannon has the potential to do more damage, but it also has the potential to do less, simply because it might only get 1 shot, it might get 3 shots. Now, on average, it's going to get the same number of shots as a autocannon, which is 2. So let's assume both weapons get 2 shots. The autocannon only has AP -1, the plasma cannon has AP -3, but the autocannon does 2 damage straight away rather than 1 damage straight away. So honestly, I feel like these weapons are quite balanced. The autocannon does have that extra 12-inch range, so it's tricky. But again, the problem is there's no special rule for these Sentinels to remove that issue of moving and shooting. You see, if you move with the Sentinel, you're going to start hitting things on a 5+. So it's a real toughie, because if we look at at the example we gave last time, which was a heavy weapons team versus a Sentinel. A heavy weapons team is 12 points plus the weapons that you buy. So if we say just 3 autocannons, we're taking an autocannon Sentinel versus an autocannon heavy weapons squad. It's 12 points plus 45 points, so that's 57 points. Okay, so the Armoured Sentinel with an autocannon is 55 points. So they're pretty similar. So my issue here is the Armoured Sentinel has the same number of wounds as the heavy weapons squad. The Armoured Sentinel has a better save as a 3+ save versus a 5+ save. However, the Armoured Sentinel is only 1 autocannon, so it's only 2 shots. It can't receive any orders, and that's really, that's really big problems for it, to be honest. So I know a lot of people are getting pretty excited about Sentinels, but I am not seeing it. I feel like I'm missing something here. Really not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm very wrong. I just can't really see the appeal of Sentinels right now. Having said that, guys, I don't think Sentinels are bad. I don't think Sentinels are bad in any way. I don't think they're amazing either. I think if you are a commander that owns a lot of Sentinels already, let's say you had the Emperor's Shield Infantry Company and you got loads and loads of Sentinels and you were using them as mobile heavy weapon platforms, I think that's still fine, and that's something you'll still be able to use. And Armoured Sentinels are pretty durable. That's one thing you've got to remember, guys. Armoured Sentinels are pretty damn durable. Essentially, when it comes to making the choice between Armoured Sentinels and heavy weapon squads, you have to ask yourself, do you want to put out more firepower, or do you want to be more durable? So I honestly think that's a pretty interesting decision, and I honestly think that is a pretty good thing to have in a codex, because that to me, just dropped my phone, that to me shows good internal balance in the codex, because not one choice is superior over the other. They just both have different strengths and weaknesses. In regards to the Scout Sentinel, it's still a really good unit, but it's the only real difference is that 3+ save versus the 4+ save. But I imagine that 3+ save is going to be pretty important, pretty useful. So just to go over my last sort of closing thoughts on Sentinels in general before we move on to some of the dedicated transports. Before going on to dedicated transports, Scout Sentinels and Armoured Sentinels, I think it probably comes down to 2 things. One, player's choice. There's no real difference between the two. and 2 if you need to squeeze every single point. If you need to squeeze every last point from your army, let's say you're playing at a relatively low points level, and Scout Sentinels are absolutely fine. They're a good budget choice, and they'll still be fairly durable thanks to toughness 5-6 wounds. If you have a little bit more points, I'd say if you're playing 1500 points and above, I think you're probably better going for the Armoured Sentinels. So, there we go. Let's move on to Chimeras. So, Chimeras are an interesting vehicle. I cannot decide whether they are good or bad now. I recently bought another Chimera, and I'm sort of thinking maybe I didn't need it. I thought that Chimera spam was going to be really powerful in 8th, but it's looking like transports are really, really expensive. So the Chimera has over 10 wounds, which means it has this new... Well, it has 10 wounds or above, so it has this new damage table. So when operating at full capacity, the Chimera has a movement of 12 inches and a ballistic skill of 4+. So that's actually really good. Even when it's down to half wounds, it still has 8 inches of movement. And it is only hitting on a 5+ at that point. So the number one thing that I've noticed about Chimeras is that they're now faster, much faster. And that means they make an actually quite good delivery system for some of our assault troops, like Ogryns or Bullgryns. Because a Chimera can transport 4 Bullgryns, which is pretty good. I'm just having a look at it now. So, a Chimera, having a look, it's strength 6, it's toughness 7 with 10 wounds, and a 3+ save. So that's pretty good. So, operating at full capacity, we have a vehicle that can move 12 inches. It can hit on a 4+. It's toughness 7, which means anything but dedicated anti-tank is only going to be damaging it on a 4 or a 5+, which is pretty good. And it's got 10 wounds, which means it's actually going to be quite difficult to chip away at this thing. It means it's going to take at least 2 melter guns to blast through it, which is pretty incredible, considering Chimeras you could get one shot popped by a drop melter. Now, the problem is that the Chimera is a single model and it's armed with a multi-laser, a heavy bolter, and 2 lasgun arrays. Now, pardon me, I'm taking a look at some of this stuff now. The lasgun arrays are free, but like it said with the Sentinels, the multi-laser and the heavy bolter you have to pay for, which is 18 points in total. But the Chimera itself costs 75 points, which means plus the multi-laser makes 85, plus the heavy bolter makes 93 points for a Chimera. That is expensive. That is really, really expensive. Really not sure what to say about that. I think that's too much. I think that's just way too much. I think considering we have infantry now, which can move, and therefore move 12 inches in a turn if they need to. Considering the heavy flamer is a whopping 17 points, you're never ever going to want to put a heavy flamer on your vehicle. Because if you have a multi-laser heavy flamer Chimera, you're going to be looking at an additional 11 points on top of that 93. No, additional 9 points, which means you're going to be looking at 102 points for a single Chimera. That's expensive. That is almost double what we used to pay. I think I'm gonna. It has just. It gets a bit worse. I mean, it no longer has the command capabilities. It no longer has firing points. So as far as I can see, you can't fire whilst in a Chimera anymore. You can use the lasgun arrays, but that's it. So no more melter gun drive-bys with Chimeras. If you want to fight, if you want to shoot someone in a Chimera, you've got to get out and do it the man's way. That is brutal, brutal stuff. I think I'm going to have to move on, guys, but suffice to say, I do not have a lot of confidence in the Chimera. I think it's what it comes down to is now its battlefield role has changed massively. Previously, a Chimera would be a solid pillbox that you would deploy, have your guys inside, and it would move forward slowly whilst laying down a ton of suppressing fire. Essentially, or it would be used to do a quick melter gun drive-by. Now, I think the Chimera is first and foremost a transport. It's designed to get models from A to B and get them there alive. That's about it. So, let's move on to the Taurox. I think the Taurox has had quite a big buff. I'm not going to lie. Okay, because the Taurox, you see... I don't know. It's tough. It's so tough. The Taurox basic is only 55 points. So you think that's pretty good. But then you've got to remember it's equipped with 2 autocannons. And you've got to pay for those autocannons. So that's 30 points on top of it. So the Taurox is actually an 85 point model. And it doesn't come with smoke launchers. Crazy. It doesn't come with smoke launchers. In terms of its stats, it's exactly the same as the Chimera, except for it's got 1 less toughness. That's the only difference. And obviously it can only carry 10 guys as well. So essentially what I'm saying here, guys, is I don't think that Chimeras and Tauroxes are really worth it. I just don't think they're really worth it. They're too expensive, and their only job is to get people from A to B. One last thing to say about that, and if that's what their job is, then the Taurox is actually now better, because the Taurox has a 14-inch movement. That's pretty good, and even when it goes down to half wounds, it still has a 10-inch movement. So, really, Taurox is actually probably a better transport now, because it does the one thing that if transports have pretty much been relegated to get things from A to B duty, then you might as well save as many points as you can. Because what you've got to understand, guys, is transports haven't been made any better at killing things. You know, a Chimera with 2 heavy bolters or multi-lasered heavy bolter still does exactly the same amount of damage as it did last edition. That's it. Nothing fancy about it. Your vehicles aren't putting out any more firepower. And this is what I've been trying to sort of make people really understand about the new sort of not even Musters, but guard vehicles in general. Guard vehicles have overall got more expensive, but they're not doing any more damage. And guard vehicles were already kind of struggling in 7th edition. So why are we going to pay more points for vehicles that aren't going to give us any additional damage on the enemy? Doesn't make sense. Why spend all these points on these vehicles when infantry as a whole has got cheaper? This doesn't make sense. Now the Chimera would be worth its points 100 times over if it had some sort of voice of command ability or command Chimera ability, but it doesn't. Can't do it. It's really, really odd. So I'm a little bit bummed out about transports, guys. I'm a little bit bleh about them. However, I want to end this video on a positive note. Well, I want to say one thing. I don't think that Chimeras and Tauroxes are necessarily bad. I don't think that Sentinels are necessarily bad. Please understand, I'm not saying any of these units are absolutely terrible. I'm just not blown away by them. I'm not jumping for joy. I'm not jumping out of my seat. I think they're all perfectly average. The really important thing that we're going to have to keep in mind, even when we're feeling pretty salty about vehicles for the Guard, is we've got to think about vehicles for other factions. From what I understand, the Rhino is 70 points for Space Marines. 72 or 75 with a Stormbolter. That's a lot of points for a Rhino. So, I think overall vehicles taken in isolation of like the Taurox, the Chimera, they look much worse, but they might actually do really good stacked up against other enemy vehicles. We'll have to wait and see, guys. And another positive thing I want to say is look at the Stormbolter and the Heavy Stubber. I don't know if I've covered this yet, but they're both, the Heavy Stubber is 36-inch range, 3 shots, strength 4. That's okay. And the Stormbolter is 24-inch range, rapid fire, 2, strength 4. So at longer ranges, you're going to want the Heavy Stubber, but the Stormbolter can now put out more shots at close range. So there's actually a decent choice to make between the two. But the real sort of amazing bit of good news is Stormbolters now only cost 2 points, and Heavy Stubbers only cost 4 points. So honestly, whereas in the past I was like, only ever get Heavy Stubbers for life, what I can confidently say to you now, guys, is doesn't matter. Put on whichever one you want. Heavy Stubbers are paying, there's no real difference. They've got cheaper, and I'd say if you're rocking something like a Hellhound, which is really fast, or Tauroxes and Chimeras, there's no reason not to. Well, Tauroxes, I think there's no reason not to slap on a Stormbolter on there. 2 extra points. It's pretty good. So that's what I'm going to finish with there, guys. I know I've not been overly enthusiastic about this section of the book, but let me just finish with, I think that it's not a good section of the book, but I don't think it's a bad section of the book. I think it's a perfectly okay section of the book. But tell me what you guys think. I want to know if I'm missing something. If there's some rule about transports I don't know. It's really important that I understand this. So, guys, please leave your comments, and thank you for watching.